Troops declare a peaceful protest over racial injustice on his own doorstep outside the White House for a photo op brandishing a Bible upside down. Of course,
yeah, that was one of the best parts of that. Just the brandishing of the Bible upside down there, really quite something. Yeah, so that gets to kind of some of the policy points there in the broad strokes, and we do have some other stuff. I mean, deregulating America, that's probably been one of the biggest thing that he's done. When President Trump entered the White House, his administration had a clear goal, which is to erase the last 8 years of the Obama administration. Much of the deregulating happened in the last 4 years, really did not dominate the headlines, but will have a huge impact on environmental and financial systems in this country for years to come. And especially some of the ones that he passed like right of the way out of the door were just really, really just crappy stuff. So he deregulated in a massive way, and through all these, like, opening things up to drilling, allowing these companies, just an absolute massive giveaway to the most powerful people in some of the worst industries and most destructive industries in this country, which is really, really just heartbreaking, and something that probably can be easily redone by Biden, but it's also kind of a back and forth game where we see all these regulations being added and back and forth, and really just fickle, and depends on, there's no real deeper structural, more consequential change than that. I mean, no matter who is in office. And another point of this, in terms of policy, on an immigration and foreign policy, the president really has kept a lot of promises, but does a more broken immigration system and shaken alliances really put America first? And that, yeah, the foreign policy situation here has really been an interesting one. There has been a little bit of a kind of, I think, a ridiculous undercurrent for, or just disingenuous undercurrent for Trump supporters trying to get the best press out of, well, Trump has been the only president since Jimmy Carter who hasn't gotten us into a new war. But, of course, obviously, he ratcheted it up, made more cruel, made more violent, made more unaccountable the current military state in a big way, ran it incredibly incompetently, which in some ways was a benefit, but there were things, and there were times where he could have started a war, so I guess you got to give him credit in that part. But in terms of shaking alliances, I think that's the thing where I question really how permanent it's going to be when someone like Joe Biden gets in there, who's kind of the consummate politician. So honestly, for all the libs out there who maybe listen, I wouldn't be too worried about that. I think that's not going to be a big problem at all. But when we do get to the relationship with how Trump has handled, like, the military-industrial complex, I think it's very, very hard to say that he hasn't been great, and a lot of people in the kind of the intelligence community rightfully, I think, hate him because he really has not given them a good time. He's just kind of disrespected him in every which way possible, which is a good thing, because these are people who do bad things both in this country and abroad a lot of the times, and are proven to be very, very ineffective at anything resembling protection, only just surveillance and protection of the interests of the elites of this country. But in terms of, yeah, there are a lot of other things to be said. Just like, as soon as the things you can, as probably a little bit more than the good things you can point to, the bad things in the Trump foreign policy have been absolutely highly consequential, and very, very troubling. So another big point, the investigations. After 4 years of investigations, whistleblower complaints, indictments, and trials, there's still a lot we don't know about Russia's attempts to intervene in the 2016 election. And that was a kind of a good thing that we dropped, thank God, in the latter half of the Trump presidency. All these investigations, and really, there is a lot to be said. There is a lot to be said for the copious, brazen, and completely just unobstructed crimes that Trump committed during the 4 years he was in office and prior to that. But of course, they hyped themselves up and really tried to nail him down on the one crime that he didn't commit, the one crime that the evidence was probably the worst for. And it really, liberals didn't really face a lot of kind of political damage for it because they didn't really run on it. But the thing was, it did do some pretty insufferable damage to the brain of the modern day liberal, because the evidence for it is, even if you look at their worst allegations are released made by any sort of serious person. The thing, to the best of my knowledge, that they really did was they they did. They just spent like $100,000 on Facebook ads, and again, in the context of an election where billions of dollars were spent to completely like exploit divisions that were really already there. Speaking of divisions, President Trump, he failed to overturn the Affordable Care Act, but really, in terms of the health of the nation, has made it a clearly more divisive place, more confrontational, more angry place than it was before. And I think that's really what Joe Biden's election was, just a conscious or maybe subconscious decision by Americans to say, you know what, we need to turn down the temperature a little bit because things were just getting to it, and it's such an incredibly high point, and just the things that the level of brain breakage on both sides of things that were happening and like just previously unimaginable that were just happening, and that life was continuing to go on. We just could not take it anymore, and that was something that we really had to go back and forth on. But yeah, it's going to be really, really, really interesting. I think very also hard to predict how the country moves forward on this one. Yeah, in terms of health, actual health, President Trump failed to overturn the Affordable Care Act, but has pretty much ruined the healthcare system. And taken away of a lot of Obamacare's really most important parts. It'll be interesting to see how Biden deals with that. Of course, we know the real problem isn't Affordable Care Act versus Trump Care. It's really the whole private insurance industry as a whole. All right, so that is a little bit of the policy, the policy world and things of that nature. Now that we covered that, unfortunately James was unable to join us tonight. He's been busy. He's been on our show. He was on our show recently, so you gotta give him a little bit of a break there. But we do have for you a little bit of a taste, a little bit of just a really great Vic Berger matchup of Donald Trump throughout these past 11 months. So we're gonna play out with that.
America first. America.
Saying goodbye to one of the most iconic presidents and figures in recent memory, Donald Trump's presidency. Ended today.
The world is an angry place.
And we're proud to have been through it all.
Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities. Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape.
The world is as angry as it gets.
We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries, making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs.
You're fired. You're fired. You're